Next up, I would like to introduce Barbara Mays. Barbara Mays is a meteorologist and climatologist, currently serving as the coordinator for the NOAA's Climate Ready Nation. After 22 years in the National Weather Service, she received her PhD in Natural Resources, Climate Assessment and Impacts from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, with a dissertation based on the hard winter of 1880 to 1881. She also has her forthcoming nonfiction book, Wilder Weather, which draws further into what we can learn from the weather and climate described in these stories. She has served as an author for the 4th and 5th National Climate Assessment. Let's hear it up for Barbara.
Thanks, and give me just a second to get my presentation up. While I'm doing that, let's see how much I can do multitasking. Nope, because I got to ask them a question while I'm doing it. What I would like to know is, how many of you are high school students? Okay, how many of you are college students or equivalent? Okay, that does help, thank you. And I apologize also for my voice. A random case of laryngitis seems to have struck me, and I spent all day on vocal rest yesterday just to rest for this. But this is not my normal gravelly tone, I assure you. So hi, everybody. Again, thanks for introducing me. My name is Barb Mays Boustead, and I have been around the Nebraska area for quite a while. You mentioned I'd been in the Weather Service for 22 years before a recent job change, and 10 of those years were spent here in Nebraska. And I've lived in the Nebraska area on and off for 14 years and counting. So although I'm not from this area originally, I am from Michigan originally. I think I've lived, thanks, Mike. I think I've lived in Nebraska longer than anywhere except Michigan, and I'm quickly gaining on that number too. So this area is very near and dear to my heart. I'm very in tune with the weather and climate in this area, and my job now as the coordinator for NOAA's Climate Ready Nation is national in scope, but I still get to work right here in Nebraska, which makes me super happy because then I can come and still be a part of Nebraska's climate people, cadre, like Deb and Mike and Don and a bunch of the others who have been involved in organizing this. So let's roll right in, and there's a little clicker. Awesome. So my focus for you all is not so much on the climate of our area, but how to communicate about it. And let's just get right to it. Why isn't it enough when we are talking about climate change to just give the facts? It should be enough, right, to lay out information, scientific evidence, and say, you know, all of this evidence points to our changing climate and the horrible impacts it is having, you know, that far offset any small gains that may be coming from it. Why isn't that enough for people who we're talking to say, great, I get it, what can we do? Let's get to action. Well, because it's really hard for people to accept what goes against their lifestyles, their beliefs, and their value systems. Have any of you ever had a conversation about climate change with someone that you felt didn't go so well? Let's see it. I have. How about you? Right. Was any of the pushback you got about the facts, like a quibble about what the temperatures were doing? Right? Was any of the quibble about it the causes? Like, yeah, maybe it's changing, but I don't know that humans are a part of it. Yeah. In those moments, it becomes really hard to stand as a scientist, as a student, and talk about this with a group. It's intimidating, especially if you are in some way outmatched or outpowered, right? As a young person, you don't feel very empowered sometimes. As a female scientist, I don't feel very empowered sometimes. I've had to learn how to find my power. It's just not that easy. And it's not that easy because climate change is a very layered problem, right? It's not just about the temperatures changing, the precipitation, the storminess, the ice caps. It's entangled with just about every part of our lifestyle, how we heat our homes, how we get around and travel, what we wear, where we build our homes and businesses, and so many other things, what we spend our money on. So people's responses to climate change is not just shaped by what they understand about the science. In fact, research has shown it is shaped very little by what they understand about the science. It is shaped by their values and their worldviews. And when we realize that when we're talking to people about climate change, we're not just talking about science, it helps us open up that conversation and begin to talk to people in a way that might reach where they are. And here's another reason why it is really hard to talk about climate change. It's because humans are inclined to accept evidence that aligns with what they already believe. It is true of all humans, even yourself, whether you believe it or not. Now, some humans have taught themselves, we can learn how to recognize that this is happening and at least try to overcome it, right? We can learn that, you know, I'm a health concerned person, so maybe I'm concerned about genetically modified crops. But when you go and look at the research, okay, maybe genetically modified doesn't mean what I thought it meant, and maybe it's at least something I don't need to be scared of, okay? So the similar thing applies in a lot of what you might call controversial sciences. Vaccination, I'm gonna say a lot of words that are gonna get things thrown at me later. Vaccination falls into this category as well, and climate change. People are inclined to accept what we already believe and dismiss the rest and find a way to say, well, there must be something wrong with that piece of information because it doesn't fit with my belief system. So I don't need to worry about that. I'm gonna dismiss it and put it aside. Realizing that all people hold this framework also helps us. Oh, I just lost my screen. That's okay. Do we have a screen? Here I am, okay. I could have gone on without it, but I thought I'd give it a moment. So because climate conversations are especially tricky and challenging, we really have to think hard about how to have those conversations and kind of come in with a plan of action in advance. So think of it a bit like when you are trying to get a parent or a professor or somebody to say yes to something, right? You're trying to get a parent to say yes to maybe sending you on a really expensive field trip to Europe. You're trying to get a professor to give you an extension on a paper. When you are trying to ask for something that is hard, when you're trying to convince somebody to give you a yes on something that you're pretty sure is not something they're inclined to do, how do you do it? What are some of the tactics you use? Go ahead and just call a couple things out. You compliment them, okay. What else? You frame it in terms of things they care about. I didn't plant the answer over there, but that's a good one. Wait until they're in a good mood. Go ahead. Do what you can to get them in a good mood. Appeal to their logic. Okay, good one. Okay, did you all hear that? Use what they had as expectations in the past and meet them all for this new thing. In the back here? It's a bargain. Okay, compromise perhaps? Bribe. Please don't bribe your professors. I'm pretty sure that'll get you thrown out of school, but yeah. I think that's like advanced bargaining in some way, right? Okay, appeal to their emotions with reasons why you could do it in the first place. Yeah. Okay, so maybe clarifying your language, restating your claim in a way that's easier to understand. This is all really great stuff, right? Because you've probably figured out through your experience that you're more likely to get a yes if you appeal to things that are important to them, to the person you are trying to get something from. That expensive trip, for example, yes, it's gonna cost a lot of money. Let me show you I can work to help raise part of the money myself, and here are all the ways this is gonna support me academically so that I have a better chance of getting into the college that we're hoping I get into. I don't know if this even works with professors, but I probably would try it if I was having a bad enough time. If I give you a paper on Monday instead of Friday, I'm gonna give you a much better product. I will have had time to review this. I understand if you have to mark it down a little, but I'm still hoping I can turn it in and at least get as much credit as possible for the work that I've done. right? So we appeal to what they value. And the same is true when it comes to talking about climate change, right? You want to think about whenever you are talking about climate change to somebody, anybody you're talking to, what do they value? What is at stake for them? If you're talking to a farmer in Nebraska about climate change, I'm going to go out on a limb and say not a lot of them care that much about polar bears that they are willing to change their life for it, right? Yes, some people have a broad global perspective, but for most people, when it comes down to what dollars they take out of their own wallets and spend, polar bears in some faraway place are just not part of the equation because they have so many other things they have to consider. Like, how am I going to water this crop? Where am I buying my seeds? How much is the insurance? They certainly might care about crops that are failing because of drought, flooding, or a combination of both. They certainly might care that the farm they have in the place where they have it might not be viable by the time their children are ready to take it over because the area will be more arid, warmer, not able to sustain the crop that they grow. So finding those shared values really helps make that impact, right? That's how you talk to people and reach people. So how do you know what somebody values before you talk to them? Asking questions, getting to know what they want and need, building relationships, in other words, or using relationships you already have. Red shirt in the back? Yeah, pay attention to where they're coming from. That's good. Yes. You can base it on what they do, what they work, what how they're making a living. Can we assume that every farmer has the same perspective? No. But can we assume that every farmer cares about the land on which they are growing crops? Probably. Yeah. So yeah, those are all good ways to get to know. And here are some other techniques too, to tell stories, right? I didn't open this with a story mostly because my time is limited, but storytelling, more than sitting in a room with slides up there. Storytelling is what people remember about anything you're putting in the context of a story. So if you want to talk about climate change with a farmer, you can lay out the numbers. Here's how much the temperature will change by 2040. Here's how much the precipitation is forecast to change by 2040. Did you know that the temperatures and the dryness in July will make it really, really hard to grow corn in this area, even if the springs are trending wetter? Like, that's all numbers and stuff. But what about telling a story? What about telling the story of a kid who grows up on his parents' farm and has decided, after maybe some back and forth in their mind, that they really do want to take that farm over? And so they spend a good part of their teenage years learning about the farm. They follow their parents around. They go to college to maybe major in an agricultural art industry, something. And they come back to that farm only to find that it has become impossible to irrigate it because the aquifer has fallen, that there is not enough precipitation to raise the corn that farm raised for a long time, that just because there's the same amount of precipitation in a year, it didn't matter because it all fell in the spring and flooded it out and washed away their first seeds. And when they had to replant, that cost money. And then those seeds didn't germinate properly because the summer was so dry and hot that it sucked the moisture out of the crops. You know, there's giving facts and then there's telling the story and putting the people into it. And that really does make an impact. It can be hard to do. Like, it's hard to take that scientific information and put it into a story. But if you have that ability, that craft that you work on, and it does get easier with time. You notice I didn't call it a talent. I called it a craft because it's something you can work on and develop and learn how to do. It is way more effective, right? Way more effective. Another strategy I would consider here, and this came up from one of you, is to use that clear language. And by that I mean take the scientific jargon out of it, right? People have a hard time translating degrees Celsius, degrees Fahrenheit, so don't make them do it. In general, you should probably talk at about a 6th grade level, meaning any 6th grader can understand what you are trying to communicate. And yes, that goes for communicating with adults, except in some very specialized audiences, like maybe on a university campus. And finally, be succinct. You all know if someone rambles on for a long time, it gets hard to listen. So be succinct in your message. Make that point right up front, and then support it. Another strategy there is to not repeat the myths. It is a desire of mine as a scientist to go debunk all the myths that are out there in the world, right? All I want to do is get the correct information there. Repeating a myth actually makes it stick, even if you're repeating it to debunk it. So just don't say it out loud at all, or in writing. Don't repeat it. Repeat the consensus. Repeat the valid information. Make that be the sticky message that people get. And then, easier said than done here, but respond respectfully to disagreement. And that is not just something I'm telling you because you're youth. It's something I'm telling you because I tell it to adults at all ages, no matter who I am training or teaching or talking to. People get their information from sources they trust, even if it's not a source you would consider to be reliable or a scientist would consider to be reliable. They got that information from a source they trust. So in order for them to change and listen to you, they have to trust you more than they trust that source. They have to put that trust in you. And even if they don't say it out loud, they have to kind of admit in their head that the source that they trusted actually wasn't so valid after all. That is so hard for people to do. So hard. So be gentle with people as they're going through this. Ask questions to get at what people might really want to know or what they're really concerned about. And of course, keep yourself calm, right? Take those deep breaths. If you feel yourself getting agitated, because we are all human and it happens, if you feel yourself getting agitated, take a deep breath or get a drink or just say, you know what, I need a minute to go to the restroom. I'll be right back to finish our conversation. Go in there and collect yourself. Whatever you have to do to keep things calm and de-escalated. So we are going to have tabletops in just a moment, and I am also here to do a breakout in the afternoon. But I wanted to prompt some things on the tabletops, and I'll leave this slide up after I'm done. Who do you want to talk to about climate change? Who is it important for you to reach about it? What do they value? And what information do you think could be helpful to support what they value? Those 3 things are the building blocks for building your story, your communication around climate change with whoever you're talking about. And by the way, you'll notice that I'm talking about, you have to sort of change this for everybody you talk to. You have to sort of change how you talk about climate change to everybody you talk to. It takes work on your part to do that. So it is not the easy way out, but it is the effective way. And then I want to leave one last thing up here. I have this for just a moment. There are opportunities within NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. For those who don't know, that's the parent government agency of the National Weather Service and a whole bunch of other atmosphere and ocean groups, ocean and atmospheric research, for example. There is the NOAA Young Changemakers Fellowship. It is for high school students age 13 or older. You design and carry out a year-long project on ocean or environmental issues. I'm guessing environmental because you're in Nebraska, but I don't want to assume. And it is funded and supported and has a lot of cool perks like a trip to DC that go with it. There's also the NOAA Planet Stewards page, again on the QR code there. There is also funding opportunities for planet stewardship projects. So if you're thinking about starting something up, there are resources for teachers and students, and there's webinars, book clubs, workshops, and a bunch of things in that link as well. So I will leave this here. And again, I am going to be around. You have breakouts now. I will be around this afternoon if you have any questions or want to talk. Thank you.